We welcome all of you back. We are at the Boone Business Center on the campus of Trevecca University, and during the 3 o'clock hour, we'll meet up with Trevecca Athletic Director Mark Elliott, an old classmate of mine at Vandy. I don't think he ever had to go to summer school. And Matt Wilson, who is now the commissioner of the Gulf South, but a lot of us knew Matt from his days in Nashville at Belmont. First, most importantly, let's go to Knoxville and say hello to Knoxville sports talk show host Tony Basilio. Tony, get a good look. I paid for this.
Hey man, you look great. I was gonna say I look like somebody would flip $1 to, and you look awesome today. So
you need help.
Yes.
So, how late were you up Saturday, even though it was a day game?
Let's see. No, it wasn't a day game. Here it started at 4 Eastern, 7, probably midnight 30. It wasn't too bad.
Not bad.
No.
So I always love it when players and coaches deny the word revenge. And about 2/3 of the time, I don't buy any of it.
Right.
I have got to believe that this is a revenge kind of deal with South Carolina, that the Tennessee players have circled the date and said, man, we can't wait to get at them.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. In fact, George, if the truth is, if they don't have that, a little bit of that in them. I mean, this South Carolina team kept Tennessee from a national playoff last year. That's
exactly
what happened. I mean, it's very simple. Tennessee wins that game. They did not have to play in the SEC championship game to get to the national playoff. They were going to get in, like we've seen teams do that in the past in this league. But Tennessee went out and had a Twilight Zone night. But they're playing a South Carolina team. I saw your graphic, leading in terms of ranking quarterbacks in this league.
Yeah.
Quarterback play in this league is as bad as it's been in a long time, George. And this is an era where we're allowed to pay these guys now, and none of that makes any sense. The good quarterbacks are all in the league that's going to dissolve out there on the West Coast. That makes no sense. But anyway, the guy Tennessee's going to see Saturday night, the Vols better knock this team out early and put them out of their misery, because that guy right there is my number one quarterback in the league. And that guy's playing at a really high level, and he's playing at a high level without a ton of playmakers around him, without a great running game, without a very good offensive line. And he's, in his words, Colin Taylor today, who we had on from over there, Gamecock Central, Colin said that that guy is saying that he is the point guard on the field, and that's the way he looks at himself. By any means necessary, distribute the ball, however I can distribute it. And he's been doing it. Spencer Rattler's made a real believer out of me, George, because I thought when he was at Oklahoma, he was kind of I don't know, he was sort of off-putting. He was hard to like. And now he's hard not to like, because he goes out there and never points the finger at his teammates. He's very good. He's had a great season so far, even though they're only 2-2.
It was the Tennessee game that started getting people's attention about him.
Well, it might have been the Vandy. He played really well against Vandy here too. But Tennessee nationally, that's
big national stage. So, what do the South Carolina people think has changed about Rattler?
What they've done is they've just changed their approach with him. They've tailored the offense to him that's allowed him to flourish. And they basically, beginning with that Vanderbilt game, it's funny you mentioned that because Colin Taylor talked about that. Was that the week before the Tennessee game last year, Billy? Is that the
It was several.
I think it was before. 2 or 3 weeks before, but Vanderbilt didn't.
The lights were starting to come on.
Yeah.
Because they were starting to hand the ball to him, and they had basically decided what we're doing here is not working. Now, they have a new offensive coordinator with them this year. He does, who those two guys apparently are hand in glove. And I'm telling you, if the game is close in the second half and Tennessee's not able to knock them out early. And the thing about Tennessee is they haven't been able to knock anybody out early this year. If the game is somewhat of a football game in the third quarter, I do not trust Tennessee's secondary, and I don't trust Tennessee's offense in a close game to execute, even though the game's in Tennessee's building.
Okay. By the way, let me tell you this on the front end. Kelly will not be here today, so you're stuck with me.
The good news
for some really stupid stuff.
The great news.
Well, that's debatable. So let me try this one. So you saw this exercise that we've tried to do today.
Yeah.
Where would you put Joe Milton 1 through 14 of quarterbacks in the SEC?
You know, on my daily show today, I did a thing because we're at the third poll. Things we know about the season, things we thought, and things we know. We thought, a lot of people did, I didn't, but we thought here that Joe Milton was going to have a breakout year and become a star in college football. Not the case. Joe Milton's okay, though. Joe Milton's an okay quarterback. Bordering on pretty good, depending on when you see him. I would put him somewhere in the middle, 6, 7. I mean, off the top of my head, 5, 6.
That's exactly
7,
where we put him at 7.
Yeah,
and we'll release this thing after the interview with you, and then when Kelly gets back tomorrow, we'll talk a lot more about it. Mm-hmm. It feels like Tennessee's season is in a little bit of a holding pattern. They flunked a test against Florida, and honestly flunked it miserably. Mm-hmm. And it feels like, okay, the next big test is when they go to Tuscaloosa. Do you buy kind of this holding pattern thing at all?
I do, George, and I don't, because I don't think the team's good enough to just throw the ball out there against South Carolina and win. Tennessee's got to have a fast start in that game, has to get the crowd behind them. They're going with their dark mode jerseys. I get what you're saying in terms of signature games, but that's the jersey they're going to go with. And, look, I'm an old man. Get off my lawn. I just say wear your colors. But, those days are gone forever. So even our major league teams have like 7 uniforms.
Oh,
you don't know what you're looking at half the time.
Yes.
The Cincinnati Bengal uniform they wore last night, they look like a really bad cost cutter Winn-Dixie snack cake back in the day, some kind of vanilla thing with chocolate dribbled on top of it. Anyway, but to your point, Texas A&M is in here and after Tennessee's off week.
Right.
Very, 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 very dangerous game for the Vols. So I do get what you're saying. I think it's interesting looking at Alabama. Like, let me ask you this, sneak peek. Where do you have Alabama's quarterback? Can I guess?
Sure.
Bottom 4 in the league?
We had him at number 10.
Yeah.
And, okay, so while we're on this, what's the matter, Billy?
Are you going to want me to show it? Because it's not quite ready yet. The graphic.
No, we won't show it. Did you think Ole Miss by about the start of the fourth quarter wanted to get on the bus and say, let's get the hell out of here?
George, I don't know how to say this, but I'll say it. Lane Kiffin, for the attention he gets from the media that covers that sport, commensurate with his accomplishments as a head coach, he deserves about a quarter of the coverage that he gets. What's his signature win as a head coach? I mean, I'm serious. You know what it is? It's beating Tennessee and Knoxville 2 years ago when he came back here, and the game that ended with people throwing stuff on the field and a golf ball miraculously rolling up at his feet that I think somebody from his staff rolled out there. I think that thing had a Colonel Reb on it or an Ole Miss logo. But at any rate, what is his signature win? I'm going to help you out, Ole Miss fans and national media that fawns all over this guy. He doesn't have one. He does not have one. They had, George, to your point, they had a golden opportunity to win that game Saturday. That Alabama team, and I know Ole Miss is beat up. I get it. I get their running game is beat up, and their great back was kind of beat up coming into the game. And their wide receivers, one of whom they got out of the transfer portal, ironically enough, from Texas San Antonio, haven't been able to play. I understand that. But that Alabama team, if you score 20 points, you're winning the game.
Do you remember, Tony, when you and I were growing up, Roberto Duran threw in the towel, no moss.
No
well,
moss.
Ole Miss did everything. They didn't have a towel, but
I agree,
it looked like no moss.
I agree. And that is Lane Kiffin's coaching in a nutshell. I look at Nick Saban, who knows he doesn't have a team this year to do what Alabama fans are. You know how I know that? On his coach's show, he's acting like he has a personality.
Right.
What happens to these guys is they have to turn human when they know they're out of players. And he's at a spot this year where, he's acting like he has a sense of humor. He had like an upside down smile on his coach's show the other night. He was messing around with a caller, and then the other day on his coach's show, one of my guys, Matt Dixon, told me he saw a video of him showing that block kick, and he went and detailed that block kick. And then afterwards he said, yeah, and of course we got the ball at the 1 yard line and went backwards like 24 yards. And he was just kind of him and hawing, laughing. All of a sudden Saban's got a personality. It means his team can't play.
That's an interesting take, because you're right. Any other time, it's not quite like that.
Oh, no.
So let's go back on Tennessee. What's Cooper Mays' situation right now?
So Cooper Mays and George, I'd known about this for some time. Tennessee pretended that he was going to see the field, with Florida. He was never going to play.
Right.
He had a triple hernia surgery. And we had all kind of known, and I'm certainly not going to report that. I'm just not. And but we also knew that Josh Heupel was doing the college football head coach deal, which is, it's possible he'll play Saturday. What Heupel did that kind of aggravated me, and I talked about it on my show today, and I blogged about it as well, is he made it sound like the last couple of weeks that the young guy warmed up and said, nah, I just don't feel like going. I don't believe that. The protocol in a surgery like that generally is after 6 weeks, you're cleared. Now, maybe he's a super fast healer, but I don't know why a head coach after a game twice would repeat that. And he said it at Florida too. We brought Cooper down here, but he warmed up and didn't feel. He was never going to play in that game. A guy with a triple hernia surgery, like people I talk to, they say if you go out there before it's too soon with a surgery like that, you could rupture inside all that stuff you've had done. And 1 is enough. 3 is, buddy, that. And I can't imagine how painful that is. And then to try and play, SEC football on top of that. His status is that Saturday is really the first time outside of that window that we could see him. And if he doesn't play in this game, I would expect that after the off week, they'll get him acclimated and he'll be ready for the Texas A&M game, is my best guess. If he doesn't play this weekend, I think he's probably going to play this weekend, though.
Okay, I'm going to throw a couple of questions. Let's describe these as totally out of left field. You ready?
Sure.
This was, by the way, your father and I had this conversation earlier today.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted me to give you his best.
I love my man Watson Brown. Love him.
He's the best. If everybody in the SEC ends up the season with 2 losses or more, is there a scenario where the SEC doesn't get a team in the playoff?
Oh, I think that's going to happen. In fact, I think if Georgia loses a game, if you look at the way things are going right now, that's highly possible that you do not see an SEC team get a playoff. I'll ask you this. Does the SEC, if that scenario were to occur, George, do they deserve to have a playoff team?
No, but as you know, it just means more.
Oh, I know it means more. But you know what's funny? Eventually, and this is what's happened this year, when you have enough players that go to the NFL, which is what this league is the closest thing to the NFL that you have. Every once in a while, you're going to have a year where nobody has a full cupboard. And that's what's going on this year. I look at Georgia, and that's a Georgia team that Georgia from 3 or 4 years ago would beat by 4 touchdowns.
Right.
I
They're
look at
number
Alabama's
one
team.
right now because
Somebody
everybody
has to
has
be.
taken the attitude. They've won 2 years in a row, and until
That's
they
right.
lose, they're going to be number one. But
That's
they don't
right.
feel like a number one.
And George, their schedule's not very good. I mean, if you look at their schedule, it's not very good. And that's why if they suffered one loss, they would be in grave danger, I believe, because their non-league's not very good. It kind of never is, which is sort of a little unwhispered secret. You know, Alabama attempts to play people. Tennessee attempts to play people. Georgia and Florida, you know, Florida plays Florida State annually. At least they try to play somebody. Florida's playing Miami and Florida State next year, along with Central Florida. But, you know, the fact of the matter is that this is almost a perfect year for that to occur, which is almost unthinkable, by the way.
Okay, you want question number 2 that's totally out of left field.
I love left field, man. I live in left field.
Okay. Friday night, I've gotten home from watching the high school that I went to, and I have turned on the television to Boise State and San Diego State on the CBS Sports Network. And somebody asked this question, and I thought, that's a hell of a question, and I'm going to hit Tony with it. The question was, if Colorado had hired Deion a year earlier, would the Pac-12 have all these teams bolting?
It's such a great, you know.
Is that not a hell of a question?
It's a great question because a lot of this stuff is all overreaction to the moment. A lot of this realignment of conferences and who's hot and who's not. The reason it's a great question, George, is if you stop and think about it, programs are only worth at that point in time who the coach is and what direction they're heading in. Like if I would have asked you about Tennessee football a couple of years ago when they were floundering in the wilderness before Heupel showed up and stabilized things, it's always been a great brand, but it's not what it is. Colorado is even more pronounced because Colorado was in Nowheresville, like Nowheresville. And now the weirdest thing about that pack, whatever they are right now, I've lost track counting how many teams are in all these leagues, but this is their last go around. They probably have the best quarterback play in the league from top to bottom. They have the most interesting story in college football. Whether USC lets the air out of Colorado or not, they're still highly interesting. Every time they take the field, they're still going to be highly interesting. And the truth is, I don't know how to answer your question. Because if they could do it all over again, if you put USC and UCLA back in that league and nothing happens, okay, and you've got Deion Sanders there, what would ESPN bid for that deal?
See, it's a great point. And by the way, feel free to plagiarize and steal it.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great thought.
And this happened like at midnight. I'm about half asleep, and I hear this guy ask this question on the CBS Sports Network, which had about 46 viewers at that point. And I was like, oh my God, this is this is a great question.
It's an incredible question because, again, these networks are all captive to the moment. And Deion Sanders has changed the game there. A friend of mine that's in that business said if Colorado with Deion decided right now they would go independent, they could get a huge television deal. They could do their own thing. Because they're the university of whatever they are. They're like their own thing almost.
Okay, you've got a night game
Yeah.
against South Carolina, which obviously is going to lead in some form or fashion to a crazy post game.
Yes.
I want people to know how to reach you into the wee hours of the night.
I mean, look at me. tclub.team. I started out, like several weeks ago on here, just getting back from the beach, and I was all tan, and now my hair is all gray. I look disheveled and literally look like somebody that, if I went out in public right now looking like this, I'd probably get a buck or two flipped to me. Which tclub.team is my website. George, I got a funny story for you real quick. So when I go somewhere, I bring my guitar, okay? Like if I travel.
Right.
So I went to Philly when my son graduated from University of Pennsylvania, which is really ironic what I'm about to tell you. I went down after his ceremony, and then we all wanted to get some rest. Everybody was a little tired. And so my family went and took a nap. And I grabbed my guitar and went and sat in Center City and played music. Okay. This guy walks up to me, and I was semi-dressed because I was just at my son's thing. I had like a decent shirt on, but I just had this look about me. This guy walked up to me.
I know where you're going.
When I was playing music, he handed me $20. I said, sir, I'm not doing this for money. This is a true story. I said, I'm not doing this for money. He said, oh, I know you're not. He said, but go get yourself something to eat. And I took the money. I didn't know what to say because I went out without my wallet, because I didn't want to get mugged. I mean, no offense to Philly, but that's a great place to get mugged. And so I met up with my wife later, and I'm like, look what I got. And she goes, well, I know that wasn't in your wallet because you don't have your wallet with you. Some guy literally gave me $20 because of the way I look. So
the next time you speak to some civic club,
yes,
that's got to be your first story. That's hilarious. That is great stuff. Hey, as always, thank you.
Hey, thank you guys. Thanks.